Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. Bill Maher spent several years flirting with being an open anti-black racist, but in the last 10 years or so he's decided to quit flirting and just consummate the relationship altogether. And now we see him having open-air orgies of right-wing extremism. He recently brought on Ron Desantis to be on his sideshow, and of course Bill Maher, who loves free speech so much, didn't say a word about how Desantis and the Republicans have been waging a legal war against teachers for merely mentioning that the founders of the U.S. were slave owners, or against citizens for bringing up anything having to do with race, or discussing anything that makes white children's parents uncomfortable. Because it's not about free speech for Bill Maher, it's about speech that he approves of. Bill Maher had his love fest with the fascist of Florida, a man whose name has become synonymous with encouraging racist mass murders, with praising slavery, and with book bans. Bill Maher was completely and thoroughly disinterested with the fact that Desantis is a political creep who has abused the unconstitutional powers given to him by the Florida GOP legislature so he could attack black elected officials. Bill Maher wasn't bothered by any of that. Sure, you can go ahead and have people who were voted into office removed by the governor simply because he doesn't care about that. But hey, if Joe Biden is being told that he didn't win the election, well, we can't have that, and he doesn't see the contradiction. But none of this is new. It seems that Bill Maher has been a fanboy of Desantis for quite a while now. And the more that Desantis griped about woke and critical race theory, the more Maher liked him. In fact, for the longest time, it's been pretty clear that Bill Maher and Ron DeSantis probably have the same clowns writing their scripts for them. But my point is that Bill Maher's adoration for DeSantis didn't just start this week. He's been absolutely infatuated with the Florida fascist for some time now.
No, but I don't think I've ever seen DeSantis, and I hear all the time from other people, and I don't doubt it, that he has no personality. It's a terrible, that he's very dull and boring, which first of all, in a politician, I find that fantastic. I don't want personality.
Well, yes, but what he says is not boring.
Compared to Trump, he doesn't have a giant ass. He has hair. He's got,
compared to Trump, he has policies, which Trump doesn't have. And the policies are really horrible.
Well, he does a lot of performative art, yes. Some of it is a reaction to policies that were insane to begin with. Parents were not unreasonably concerned that schools had become a place where kids were being exposed to ideas about gender and race that were completely inappropriate for someone 3 years old.
Now, what the world were schools teaching 3-year-olds about race that Bill Maher felt was so inappropriate? What were they teaching 3-year-olds about race that he objected to? Notice how he doesn't say that? He just says, I'm talking to things about race that were totally inappropriate. Bill Maher is not reacting to what Ron DeSantis is doing. What he's doing is he's agreeing with the idea that Ron DeSantis is giving the middle finger to people who apparently hurt little Billy's feelings. Ron DeSantis responded to the Black Lives Matter protests by writing and signing into law measures that make it where you can hit black people with your cars and there's no civil penalty for it, to legalize vehicular homicide as long as it's against black people who are demonstrating. He also encouraged anti-black massacres like the one that took place in Jacksonville. The guy runs around saying slavery is a good thing. The guy's passing law after law specifically meant to target black people, target black history, and to target our very existence. And what does Bill Maher say about that? He just dismisses it as, well, that's a kind of performance art. There's no art to it. These are actual laws. Arresting black people simply because they voted? And Bill Maher says, oh, well, that's just performance art. This clown loses his mind if somebody criticizes one of his crappy, not funny jokes. If somebody says we don't want you coming to our campus, he doesn't call that just performance art. Oh, he says that that's an existential threat to the whole doggone country. Black people being locked up, black people being killed because of Ron DeSantis. Oh, that's just performance art. See, Bill Maher and Ron DeSantis have an enemy in common. Black people. Bill Maher is your typical entitled white supremacist. He got butthurt several years back because some college students didn't want him to speak at their school because of all of the stuff he had been saying about Islam. And then when he showed up anyway, some of them turned their backs on him during that commencement ceremony. Bill Maher never got over that. And his constant whining and complaining about Islam was another thing that made it where he was persona non grata. And instead of him checking himself, or at the very least saying, hey, I got to speak my piece and that's good enough, instead he decided, no, you have to agree with me, or at the very least, you can't be allowed to criticize me. Bill Maher wanted to make it very clear that for him, free speech means that he's free to say whatever he wants, and you can't say anything in response. You certainly can't criticize him. And speaking of critical, he's also been making it clear that he's tired of looking at the Asian, sometimes self-proclaimed black vice president, Kamala Harris.
It's very hard to take the nomination away from the president.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
A sitting president. And what I could see is replacing the vice president, because she's just not very popular anywhere. And it didn't seem to work out. And I don't know, that's been done before on a ticket. I just think she's a bad politician.
Now, of course, we all know exactly what Bill Maher's real problem is. Kamala Harris won't come on his show. That's the problem that he's got. He was whining about Obama for a hot minute. How come Obama won't come on my show? I gave Obama money and he won't come on my show. He whined about Obama for years until Obama finally came on his show at the end of his administration. But that's Bill Maher's real problem. If Kamala Harris showed up on his little side show, he'd do a 180 and all of a sudden be talking about, well, Kamala Harris, I used to be really ambivalent about her, but now, I think she's won me over. That's his deal. And Bill Maher is also palling around with James Carville more often, so we see that the connections between these racist white liberals and the white right is incestuous. They share a lot of psychological common ground, especially when it comes to black people. No matter how much Bill Maher may have been annoyed with Islam or what have you, it's pretty obvious that the main thing that Bill Maher has in common with all of his new buddies is that they all hate woke. But unlike, say, Bethany Frankel, who made a fool of herself when she was asked to define woke, Carville and Maher have a concrete definition of what woke means. Anything that black people are in favor of, or anything that black people call out as racist. But something I need black people to understand is that Bill Maher is hardly alone when it comes to his anti-black antipathy. The white media, and this includes a lot of your so-called alternative white media personalities, have been pushing this narrative heavy lately about how so-called identity politics is a bad thing, and it's divisive, and needs to stop. But of course, whenever they talk about whose identity politics needs to be stopped, they always make sure to talk about black people. Clearly, identity politics is being positioned to be the new woke. They're setting it up to be the new racial code word. Since woke apparently didn't get them the kind of traction they were hoping for, it blew up in their faces. People simply weren't demonizing and pejoratizing the word like they needed them to. Now they're going to try another one that they think has a little bit more name recognition. Because as they see it, black people are getting out of hand, making demands, putting pressure on the enemy. So black people have to be stopped. The enemy has to step up their efforts to make it clear in the public mind that black resistance is the primary threat to America, and everybody needs to band together against black people. We're going to make anti-black racism into the unifying principle of America. That's what they're trying to put in place. See, when it comes to identity politics, nobody talks about Asians or Hispanics or Jews. Nobody would dare say that supporters of Israel are playing identity politics or that that's divisive. They would never say that. But when it comes to black people being able to simply live our lives, hell, if it comes to us simply merely being able to live, that's divisive, and it's dangerous, and it has to be stopped. But the people who should be the most ashamed in all this are the black people who went on Bill Maher's show all these years. The Michael Eric Dysons and the Killer Mikes. Black people who willfully overlooked Bill Maher's decades of low-key anti-black racism and still went on his show even after his racism became blatant. When Bill Maher got called out for using the N-word on his show years back, no less than Michael Eric Dyson was wanting to be the very first Negro on his show to talk to him. These sorry bootlicks are always trying to hawk their books or to try to find a way to raise their profile and get some speaking fees. See, that's what these talk show appearances are for them. Just a means to promote themselves. And they'll do anything, overlook anything, excuse anything in order to get there. Bill Maher spent many years hanging out with hood rats like Kareen Steffens and having bootlick Negroes on his show guffawing with them and yucking it up. Bill Maher's always been a racist. but he felt that he was the Jewish guy who was down with the community, so he felt that he had some sort of special dispensation to be racist. And now he's butthurt when he found out that wasn't true. Bill Maher never liked black people. All he did was he wanted to have some chicken head who he could have some gutter sex with, and some dusty dudes who he could smoke some weed with. That was the limit of Bill Maher's contact with the black community. And it's not some victimless crime for black folks to decide to hang out with racists like Bill Maher. These bigots are quick to use the fact that there's some dumb Negroes foolish enough to associate with them, or to smoke weed with them, or to have gutter sex with them, and that certifies that these white supremacists aren't racist after all. Why, look at my black friends over here. These bootlicks are just shields for racists like Bill Maher to hide behind. I can only wonder how Karine Steffens and some of the other free-range thoughts Maher was smutting it up with back in the day must feel about him now, especially since he's now actively campaigning against sister girl Kamala Harris. Times change, but the bootlicks stay just as dumb as they've ever been. And speaking of dumb, giving a platform to an open anti-black racist like Ron Desantis, whose entire political platform has been blatant fascism, and to never call him a fascist while you're talking to him, to never even mention the word, that's how you know that Bill Maher and DeSantis' little political makeout session was all staged. That Maher agreed not to use certain words as a condition of having the amazing failing DeSantis on his sideshow. Bill Maher said that DeSantis' campaign couldn't be doing too well if he was on Bill Maher's show. Well, I say Bill Maher's show can't be doing too well if he had to stoop to putting DeSantis on. These two losers were made for each other. And Ron DeSantis, he didn't get anything out of being on Bill Maher's show. He's still pursuing the failing strategy of only going on platforms and shows that already like him and will give him fawning praise. That's how he wound up having that Twitter fiasco. He looks for friendly outlets to go to, but just because he can pretend to be civil for a few minutes, that doesn't mean anyone's going to forget what a racist fascist he is. It doesn't get the stink off of him. That's what Ron DeSantis is too dumb to figure out. He used to rail against woke all the time. In fact, that was all he did. A noun, a verb, and woke. He said Florida was going to become the place where woke goes to die. At least he used to say that, but nowadays he doesn't say the word woke at all. Not only did the racist Republican rubes who liked him get bored with that word and go over to Trump because they wanted somebody with some new material, but the word woke simply wasn't able to be a driver of any sort of support. People don't see the word woke as a bad thing. Most of them don't even know what it means, and the ones who do know are actually in favor of it. These right-wing nuts clearly didn't know what the word meant. So we see Ron DeSantis doing stunts like talking to Bill Maher, who of course didn't mention the word woke during their little interview. He knows as well as DeSantis that that word doesn't poll well when it comes to turning out the vote for Republicans. And DeSantis, who put all his chips on being the anti-black candidate, is now trying to dial it back ever so subtly, because he's slowly, very slowly, realizing that his biggest problem isn't that people don't know who he is or what he stands for. The problem is everyone knows exactly what DeSantis stands for. They know exactly who he is, too. And they hate him and his policies. See, Ron DeSantis was feeling his oats for a hot second a year ago. But reality always has the last word, and DeSantis' poll numbers are continuing to crater because the other candidates like Vivek racist Swami are taking his voters from him. None of the GOP half-wits calling themselves running against Trump can actually cut into Trump's voter base. His poll numbers haven't moved. All they can do is take votes away from each other. So basically, they're cannibalizing one another's voters. The main one who's been losing votes, however, is DeSantis. Everyone's taking his voters away, and because he has no ideas, no charisma, and no character, even his own donors are abandoning him. Sounds like Bill Maher, doesn't it? DeSantis' campaign, such as it was, already had the smell of grisly death all over it, and he knows it. His campaign isn't just falling apart, it fell apart months ago. At this point, we're watching it disintegrate. Poor, stupid little Ron DeSantis and his little Joseph Goebbels Christopher Rufo. They said that they were going to make their anti-black racist policies into a blueprint for the country. Well, I guess it's back to the drawing board. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Eric Bailey, Brenda Starr, Nikki the God, Joe, and Terrence Gaines. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.